So, very quickly, what I hope to do with you in the next, say, 20-30 minutes is just share some reflections on how do you think about career choices, how do you think about career options, share a framework of how you can think about these things, give that framework to you so that you can use it in your own lives, and talk a little bit about what certain practices that you can do starting now that can help you to have a sorted life, career, etc. Does this sound good? Hi, everyone. You can all hear me. You can all see me. We're good to go. So, when I was invited to speak, I thought a lot about what I wanted to say. And after due consideration, I decided that one thing that might be important for you and interesting for you was career choices. One thing that was important to me was social impact. And one thing that I just wanted to see if it would get you through the door was Dumbledore. If you know Dumbledore, it is a fictional character in the Harry Potter sequel, a very wise headmaster who has a lot of things to say that are very meaningful. And so I thought I would take the help of the character's voice sometimes in the conversation. And the most famous quote that he has is happiness can be found even in the darkest of places if one only remembers to turn on the light. So, very quickly, what I hope to do with you in the next, say, 20-30 minutes is just share some reflections on how do you think about career choices, how do you think about career options, share a framework of how you can think about these things, give that framework to you so that you can use it in your own lives, and talk a little bit about what certain practices that you can do starting now that can help you to have a sorted life, career, etc. Does this sound good? Very quickly, just background, no, so that why am I talking about this? What is the context here? So I wrote the JE and the humanities and social sciences entrance exam, got through both, and then decided to join for BTech here. Got into NAVAC, Naval Architecture and Ocean Engineering, and did a branch change to mechanical engineering. Graduated as a mechanical engineer and then did my MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. In all of this time, if I look at what was one thing that I felt was critical in my journey, it was this. How many of you know IVIL, IIT for Villages? Awesome. So, IVIL is a student initiative on campus in IIT Madras called, which works towards as an action platform and a discussion forum about rural development and developmental issues. For 3 years of my 4 years on campus, I was, my blood, sweat, and tears were going towards working towards IVIL. And it was here that I probably wrote my first minutes of meeting. It was here that I first time edited a website. And it was here that I learned about so many different perspectives that are there around what is social impact, what is development, and how do you build an organization. Armed with a lot of this, I then joined a corporate consulting firm called McKinsey and Company. It is a large consulting firm. What it does is it helps organizations reach their goals by supporting them on important strategic elements. Over there, I think I got trained on structured communication, on thinking about problems at scale and how do you solve them at scale, and implementing with rigor. After 4 years there, I moved on to an organization to call People. People is an education nonprofit which works with governments to strengthen learning in government schools. I worked in Delhi and Madhya Pradesh, and we were working across 300,000 teachers, 10 million children in one state that is Madhya Pradesh in India. And a lot of what I had learned at McKinsey as part of the leadership team of People, I was able to essentially use the same hammer, but use it on a nail that I cared about. Right. Uh, and I joined 6 months before COVID, 5 months before COVID. And I think I was in the right place at the right time, where I was in a position where there was a certain set of skills. There was a phenomenal team around me, and we were able to do a lot of meaningful work during COVID and after. And the organization grew. There was a lot of good work done. And 4 years later, I felt like I've been working on social impact for so long trying to understand, trying to experiment, doing a lot of things. But maybe I want to take a break. I want to take a career break and take some time to reflect on what is, ask the big questions, reflect on my purpose, all of those good things that a lot of people want to do at some point. I decided to do that. And a few months in, as people were like, look, I wish I could also take a break. You're having these interesting conversations. Is there a way in which I can also access them? I started a video podcast called Raahi Impact Journeys. And I've been doing a set of other experiments to strengthen the development sector, strengthen the social sector, and help people work with each other. So I've put it all under this umbrella of Raahi Impact. And that's what I'm doing now. So conversations include speaking with one of my professors from IIM Ahmedabad, with someone who's an IIT Madras graduate and is running an alternative learning center, a community learning center in Hyderabad, and so on. Very, very interesting conversations which help me reflect a lot. And it's up on YouTube and you can also access it. So, why am I talking to you about career choices? I have had the privilege of seeing a lot of different journeys over the last many years, talking to a lot of people whose journeys that I've tried to understand, try to help on, as well as my own journey, where just like you, I have had many reflection points, questions, concerns, insecurities, fears as I have navigated the journey. So, whatever it is that I am able to share, I thought I would share today. So, why should we talk about career choices? Why does this matter? Anyone? Oh, yes. Got it. Good one. So, the time that you spend, it's going to be a large chunk of the time that you spend. What else? Any other reason? Why should we talk about career choices?
It's a major source of income.
Your career is probably going to be a major source of your income. Very important consideration.
Yeah. We shouldn't go with the flow of whatever is surrounding us, most importantly.
That is also an important point. We should not necessarily go with the flow. We should be mindful, by the way, that there is a flow and that we're going in that flow and see whether we like it or whether we want to swim and take a little bit of effort. So I'm going to take all of these points and going to work with that. So if you look at a typical lifetime, we are broadly talking about 550 weeks. That's your life, right? And in those 550 weeks, if I just break it down, 50% of it is spent taking care of yourself, sleeping, eating, cooking, showering if you want to, all of those things, right? And then 20% is gone in childhood only. By the time you've gotten here, 20% is already gone. Now, what does that leave? That leaves something about 30% left. And that 30%, let's say, and again, you can debate on how much you want to spend, and that's also in consideration. A good part, a good 20% of your life is actually spent on what is called career or work. And another 20%, or let's say 10%, 15% is spent with your friends, family, and yourself, your free time. Right? And so it is a large part of the discretionary time you have. This is a large part of what you can use to express your identity, to actually understand who you are, what you want to do in the world, and your contribution in many ways. By the way, I know some of you are shocked that it's only like 20% left, but yeah, and not sleeping at night is not the way to solve for it. So, before anything else, let me just take a second to just share that having career choices is a privilege. Why do I say that? To have career choices, that means that you've had a solid education, you have financial space, you have, for whatever reason, been born in a peaceful part of the world, and you have enough of options in front of you to choose what you want to do. And so the question becomes, what is it that you want to do? But I just thought it's really important that we don't forget that there is a full pie. It is not only that 20% that is there. You need to think about your life, your personal situation as you navigate these things. And so, can I get this is the second question for all of you. What are the typical choices that you have when you graduate? Whether you are an undergrad or a postgrad or a PhD in the room, So if you look at a lot of these options, I tried to kind of categorize them, and I realized that it's not easy to categorize, right? So what are the different axes of decision? What sector do you want to work in? Like, do you want to work in science and technology, healthcare, research or academia, development sector? Second question, what role do you want to take? Do you want to be an engineer, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, right? A management professional? By the way, everyone says management karoge. Like if you do management, anything goes. You can do whatever. That's actually what I've realized is this is also a specialization. You are a management professional. Um, the type of organization. Do you want to work for a private organization? Do you want to work for a government, like in the civil services? Do you want to work for an academic institution, like come back and join IIT Madras or some other institution? And do you want to do it in a startup, a mid-sized firm, a large bureaucracy? What fits you? How do you decide? There are so many axes and so many decisions, right? And so I think this is when I will invoke Dumbledore to remind you that it is your choices that show what we truly are and not our abilities. And so, what I want to leave you with is slowly coming to the framework that I mentioned. And by the way, don't beat me up saying this is too simple. Why, it's not a framework. But it is fundamentally, from everything that I've seen, there are a few factors that you have to think through. There are 4 questions that you have to ask yourself. First question, what are your values? What are your identities? Who are you? What Second question, what inspires you? What do you love doing? Third question, what are your lifestyle needs? And final question, what is the impact that you want to see in the world? And let's go through each of these and understand what is behind each. First thing, know yourself. Every single one of us is unique. Take a moment to think about your wing in the hostel. Just take a second to think about your friends, right? Or people in your colony if you're not staying in the hostel. Every single person, if you look at it, no, if you try to put one person's career into another person's life, it may not fit. But that's hard for us to also realize that the same is true of us also. We're also unique. We're also with our own propensities. And this campus is one where people sometimes find themselves and sometimes lose themselves. And this is a space and a time where you actually will be able to engage, understand, and explore your identities. So, for example, are you maybe, is Girish, what is Girish? Right? Um, like someone I was speaking to today said, I am a caregiver, I am an academic, and I am an activist. That was her set of identities. For me, it might be I am a management professional, I am apparently a podcast host now, and I am an aspiring musician, and I am a voracious reader. Once I define that for myself, I have to spend time on those activities that will say that, I can't not read books and call myself a voracious reader. So I think one part is understanding what makes you tick. The second part is understanding, like someone was talking about the flow, right? One thing that I've realized is every organization that you are part of holds a certain belief, holds a certain point of view. And it's really important for you to just know what your values are, for you to connect with that and understand if those are the values that you will enjoy. There have been times when there has been one short period of time in my life when I had to pretend to not be a social sector person. I can tell you that was one of the hardest times of my life because it's really hard to pretend to be somebody that you are not. And those of you who have pretended to be somebody or not will relate to what I'm saying, and those who haven't will be like, what is this guy talking about? You are the lucky ones. But it's hard. Embrace who you are and try to work with that knowledge of what you value. If I say that, I might enjoy something, but what do I love doing becomes a question. Very quickly, number 2, what inspires you? What makes you feel awesome? I remember people used to ask me, how are you doing? And at one point of time during my career, I'd be like, I'm doing well. And then I shifted organizations, shifted spaces, and then people asked me one day, 3 months in, somebody asked me, "So, how are you doing?" And I said, "I'm happy." And I was like, "What did I just say?" My answer changed and I didn't even realize it. So, I think finding things that inspire you, finding things that you enjoy, finding things that give you meaning just makes life much easier. Imagine you are someone who loves sports, and in campus, instead of allowing you to go to sports, they say that you have to go to the library every day, or the other way around. I don't know if you would be okay with that. And if you're not okay with that when you're on campus with the freedom that you have, then I wonder how you would feel if you had to do that for 20% of your life, right? And this one, again, call back to Dumbledore. It takes a great deal of courage to stand up to your enemies, but it takes as much courage to stand up to your friends. On the first point about knowing yourself and knowing what inspires you, might lead you down a path that may not be the typical path. And it will take you a lot of courage to say, it's okay, I'm going to try this. You need to just be sure and you need to be clear that these are your decisions and this is the cost that you're willing to bear for those decisions. And you may have to stand up to your friends, to your family to be able to do that. And that doesn't mean a confrontation. That doesn't mean that you have to act without kindness. It can still be kind, but it can still be firm. And there are so many stories of so many people who are from my batch and before who now have 10 years of runway, right? And you can see one person that, as I was reflecting, came to mind was an amazing senior called Hariharan Mohan Raj, 2 years senior, engineering physics, good at math, but brilliant at music. I mean, for an inter-hostel Western music competition, that group ended up making their own song. Like they composed a whole piece just for inter-hostel Western music and a brilliant song. And so what he did is at the end of 4 years, he went to study sound engineering in New York University. And he has an article in the Fifth Estate, which was IIT Madras magazine, which I found is still online, where he has written that there are things that you're good at and there are things that you love. You can do what you're good at for a really long time, but once you get tired of it, you'll feel like shooting yourself, right? And in his case, I think he's still into music, he's still working on it. And you should read the article where he says that. But that's just one story of so many where people have taken unconventional paths, taken twists and turns, and moved away. Third one, and this is me sharing the best piece of advice that I got. At the end of campus in my fourth year, I got into IIM Ahmedabad and everyone said, you have to go. So I said, okay, I'm going. And someone came up to me and said, you know what? Many, many years ago, when I did my MBA, there was something that I thought of and I want to share that with you. He said that be careful that your need base doesn't increase. What tends to happen is when you get a bigger paycheck, when you get a bigger salary, and and when you do an MBA and you get into that world, your lifestyle changes. And then your needs will increase. And when your needs increase, it's very hard for you to go back. For whatever reason, something that was told to me 10 years ago has stayed with me. And so, if you look at my lifestyle, it is broadly the same as it has been, unrelated to the paycheck that has been coming in, whether it's zero or whether it's much more. And I think that I find that a powerful thought. At the same time, the second aspect of it is, yeah, again, every single one of you has your own story. Some of you will have ailing parents, some of you will be the first generation learners, and you will have people who you need to take care of at home. You will have financial responsibilities. You may not have any of these things today and you might have it tomorrow, starting tomorrow. I have met people who care deeply about something and they want to do it, but they are mindful that they are not able to, and sometimes they beat themselves up. I just wanted to call that out to say it is not necessary to beat yourself up, because it's important to also understand what you need for your life to sustain, for your loved ones, your family, your friends. What is it that you need? Some people need a minimum level of income, so they can't afford to just go off. But there are some of us who might be privileged, who might be able to do it, and then maybe should. And that leads me to my favorite point, which is, what is the impact that you want to have in the world? I'm not talking about doing work in an NGO. I'm not talking about doing work somewhere else. Any job that you do, whether you're working in engineering, whether you're working in corporate finance, whether you're working wherever you're working, in your career, your work is going to have a social and an environmental impact. You might give employment to 1,000 people. You might end up improving healthcare facilities. You might end up being the cause for trees being cut. You might end up standing in the way of someone who is, causing oppression. But the thing is that you will, just by the fact of your actions or your inaction, will be with your power and your privilege that you have, just being where you are having a social impact. And I just wanted us to be mindful of that. Because one of the things that I've noticed is there are people who I couldn't initially understand. But when I understood where they were coming from, it started to make sense. There were people who said, I will not work for this type of companies, or those who were disillusioned with certain types of companies. Where they were coming from is they were actually saying, the work that I will be doing and contributing to through this organization is not the vision that I have for the impact I want to leave on the world. That is not the direction that I want to take things. Right. And I think I just wanted to, break this boundary we have between social impact organizations, which are usually non-profits and foundations and CSR arms, etc., and people who are like a data analyst in a large tech firm, or who might be, I don't know, sorting through papers in a government office, or someone who is, doing research. These are usually not considered to be social impact work. But I think I just want to bring home the fact that the choices that you make have a tangible impact in the world, though you may not see it in front of you. And there is a brilliant example. So there is this academic called Roger Fisher. There is a very interesting thing that happened in when they were talking about nuclear war and deterrence. Roger Fisher had this interesting idea of how to prevent all out nuclear war from happening in the world. You know what he said? He said that the nuclear codes that you need to launch the nuclear missiles in the US, you should put it in a little capsule next to the heart of a volunteer who will walk around with the president of the US at any given point of time. And if the president wants to order nuclear bombs to be put out, he needs to take a knife and say, listen, George, I'm really sorry, but we are doing this to save tens of millions of people, and have to put a knife through the man's heart and take out the capsule. And people are like, you're crazy. The president is not going to kill someone just to launch a bomb and kill thousands of millions of civilians who are innocent. Right? And so be very careful when the impact of your work is very far away in distance and very far away in time. Like you putting a plastic bag out there and having a deer eat it. I'm keeping on seeing that sign outside, so that comes to mind. That's not happening the moment you put the plastic bag out there, but that has its own impact. You helping somebody, it may not have an immediate impact, but just keep that lens in mind. And I really like the Roger Fisher story because I found that to be a very powerful thought. And so, if you are looking to make career choices, this would be my 4-part set of questions to ask yourself to decide what would work. And to close this, just some practices that I would suggest that you can do now, which will help you get there. First one, and this is something that I keep telling people, keep a journal. A journal is essentially a diary entry, what they say. I have been keeping one since 8th standard. And what I have found it to be powerful for me personally is it helps me to remember who I am and things that I have done. Because many, many years later, your neurons can fool you. You can think that you were actually unhappy when you were actually happy. You can think that you were happy when you were actually deeply unhappy, right? And you might have forgotten things that you have done that had a deep impact in your life. And for the Harry Potter fans out here, keeping a journal is like having a pensieve where you have too many thoughts crammed in your head, and you can take those thoughts out and keep them aside so that you will have time and space for other things. But you can always come back to it and relive those memories. I have found it to be helpful in preparation, and I have found it incredibly helpful in pattern recognition. I kept getting professional feedback while I was at work. And then 6 months later, I'm looking through it and I suddenly realized that actually there was an underlying theme for all of the feedback sessions I had. And I would not have realized that that's the case unless I had my notes with me. Second, try. And this would be my one, if there's one takeaway from this entire conversation, it would be try something. Very often, when we think about things in abstraction, that's very different from how it actually feels. So, the best way to know if you like something, if you are inspired by something, if this will be a good fit for you, is to find a way to do it in a reversible way. Think of it like a one-way door versus two-way door. It's like a door that doesn't lock. For example, if you feel like, I don't know if I would like working for a small company, do a 3-month internship with that small company and see if it works for you. So, an internship is an easy way where you've invested 3 months, but it's not like a full time employment that you've taken, right? You're like, yeah, I'm thinking I'll move to a village and live there for the rest of my life. I would like that. Do that for 1 week and come back and let me know how you feel, right? So, but remember to try and not be always lost in abstraction. It does not do to dwell on dreams when life is there to be lived. Third, I would say just learn as much as you can without boundaries. Some of the best learnings that I have had has been in conversation with other people. It has been sitting through lectures that I haven't actually enrolled for. It has been in random Instagram reels that I was watching. But do not put any filter or prejudice around where you are going to learn from. Every single person, irrespective of age, of career, of orientation of any sort, can be a good mentor, and you can be a good mentor for the person as well. So I really think it's important for you to keep learning wherever you can, whatever you can. As an example, I will just go back to what I said about IVIL, IIT for Villages, the club at IIT Madras. Whenever I'm doing anything, somewhere I see echoes of things that I've tried and learned to do there. I look back at the emails I've written in my third year and I'm like, these are professional emails that I've reached because I'd kept writing emails with updates and reflections and monthly updates and all of those things. I learned to document when I was doing that. I learned to speak because of IVIL, because it was a place where there were like 5, 10 people at the time that I was getting active. And 2 years later, we had 40, 50 people. And so every time we would meet under the knowledge tree, which is a tree outside the library, I would reach 15 minutes early. And I would take some time to kind of get my thoughts in order, be like, okay, how is this meeting going to go? What will we talk about? All of those were muscle that I was building without realizing, which helped me to become effective, efficient at the workplace, which is helpful for me. And I wasn't doing it for the CV point. One of the things that I will had was there is no CV point, there is no hierarchy, there is no rat race. And that somehow was good because I was following what inspired me and I ended up learning. And finally, and this is what I would really want to leave you with, engage with diverse perspectives and diverse people. Again, think about your wing. How much time have you actually spent getting to know their lives, getting to understand them? How much time have you spoken to final years and seniors to understand how they've been thinking about life? How much time you spend with PhD students if you're a BTech and humanity students if you're a MTech? I'm just making, you know, slightly distant connections here. How did they make those choices? What do they believe in? What are their learnings? Again, try to engage with people who you might not agree with. And it's totally fine to not agree with them. Their life experiences are different. But engage with them. Ask the big questions. Figure out if you really, you know, question your own values, question your own beliefs, and see if you will become a different person at the end of it. Because who I was 20 years ago at the age of 13 is very different from who I was 10 years ago, is very different from who I am today. Right? And finally, this is the lifetime that we spoke about. And I wanted to just leave you with something that I feel very strongly about and something that I'm working on. A lifetime that you have should also be worth living. The way that typically we end up, I say we because it includes me, we end up prioritizing it is work is more important than relationships, is more important than health. But a friend of mine from IIT Madras told me some time ago, and that has stayed so strongly with me and resonated with so many people. Prioritize like this. If you don't have this, if you don't have this, you don't have the rest. And if you don't have this, the rest may not actually be worth doing. And so, health, more important than relationships, more important than work, is something that I would request you to keep in mind as you move forward. I believe that is it from me. Thank you so much for being such an attentive and engaged audience. And I hope this was helpful. Happy to take any questions. Derek.
Actually, I like this picture here.
Thank
So
you.
did you intentionally choose it like to show some kind of message, or like, so what is that? Because
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually showed it to tell you a story about my sister. But then I decided that might confuse the overall conversation, so I didn't. But now that you've given me an opening, here is the story. You guys mind? Okay. So, when my sister was a wonderful person, when she was in 8th standard, she was in school and a female Air Force pilot came to school. Right? And she comes home and she's super inspired. She's like, you know what? I'm going to become an Air Force pilot. I will have, uniform job. And this is not a story of how she, crossed this short service board and then she became an Air Force pilot and, no. This is a story where she went on to become the first batch of aerospace engineers from Amrita University, went on to do her MTech in aerospace engineering at IIT Kanpur. And for the last decade, for 10 years now, she's been working with the Hindustan Aeronautical Labs, which is HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, as a design engineer. She's been working on helicopters, fixing snags, ensuring that the machines are manufactured, working, coordinating across a lot of people. And why I wanted to share that story was because I felt like often that in many ways shows me why I actually came here to speak, because I realized that sometimes there is value in hearing other people share things, and B, showed me how passion and inspiration are important, but it's also important for you to know yourself and know what your competencies and your interests lie in, because she's the engineer of the family and she's phenomenal at what she's doing. And she followed her she followed her path, which was different from what was her inspiration. And I felt like sharing that might be useful to share with you, that that's often how it might turn up, and that's okay. And I wanted to make sure I shared about my sister because there's something that she told me I wish I had known 10 years ago when I was graduating. And today is National Science Day, and I felt like this is important for you to know. If you're asking this question, should I do an MBA, etc., etc., she told me this thing, that science is like magic. Because science, if you really think about it, is understanding how the universe works. And engineering is making that universe work for you, to make something happen in the real world. Spells are the magical equivalent of equations. If you know the equation, you can make water move from point A to point B, you know? And I just felt like I want to share that with all of you who might be missing inspiration on the core job front, because we do need, solid engineers to come out of this institution. Thank you so much for asking this question, because yes, I did think about this when I put it up there.
Um, a lot of the points as a part of your 4 point framework mostly focus on introspection and talk about the self and what you prioritize as such. But don't you think in today's world there's a lot of external influence as well, just popular discourse about career options, career choices that one should make? Right from the start, right from 10th grade, where you choose a stream that you want to enter into, influence from society, influence from all sides, everybody that you interact with. So, why is it that your 4 point framework focused only on the self?
That's a good question. And I think my answer to that question is exactly because of what you mentioned, right? Because there is so much noise around us, there is so much of narrative around us, there is so much that everyone is telling us to do, don't do, this will work for you, this worked for me. There was just so much that is there, and every one of us is such unique journeys. I just honestly felt like the only way that one is able to answer such questions, to say, boss, you should do this, this is the best thing, you got this, how can you not do it, right? Often the answer lies in understanding yourself and understanding what you need, understanding what you like, and what you really want to make happen in the world, which is what we ended up with. So Otherwise, I mean, I would be the next what do you call that? I would be next peddler of dreams, saying that, you know what, AI guys, AI is what we should focus on. In fact, don't even learn coding from now. Yeah. I hope people don't take that clip and say I decided now. Yeah. Right? I hope that makes sense. I really feel like the more disconnected we feel with our own identity is often when we get into situations that are stressful for us career wise. And those who I've seen who are wonderful are those who are extremely self aware about what makes them tick, what they need to get better at, and what they enjoy doing. So they make life fun that way.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
I got something new and it's not going really the way I expected it to. How do I keep up that momentum to push myself and keep going in that area?
So you are picking up something new, you like it, you enjoy it, and you are facing hurdles because it is something new fundamentally. Well, my take to that would be, maybe it sounds like what you're looking for is a little bit of time to find your feet and a little bit of kindness from the people around you, because you're feeling like I'm not able to deliver as much as I needed to or wanted to, and you need that space. And in such situations, my sense is that an honest conversation helps, saying, hey, let's have a conversation. Here's what I think I'm doing well. I think I'm going to need a little bit of time. Is this typically how it is? How am I really doing? What are those 2 3 things that need to do? So there was one project that I did that bombed. For 3 months I tried everything I could, and professionally that's been the one big, you know, failure or that really tough time. I was picking up something that was bigger than I had picked up before. I was in a situation where I ideally should be fine, but my clients were complaining, my team was mutinying, my leadership was like, what happened to this guy? And after 3 months I got airlifted into another project saying this is just not working and sometimes you just need a reset. But then when I was speaking to the person that, my manager's manager, he was like, look, you had 3 months. You could have picked up a part of that puzzle every week and learned a little bit about it. And while he was not like victim blaming me in any way, I thought that was actually interesting, which is, I was so busy in the everyday trying to learn it and trying to catch it, I somehow was not able to be elevated and be strategic about picking up different parts and still getting a little better at things in a structured way, um, and solving. But I don't know if that fully answers. But okay, thanks. Yeah.
Hi. So, how you found social sector was your thing? I mean, is it from only? I mean, since that is my thing and I have to do it. And today, most of the students, if not all, have from their parents or friends that you should do this, and you going to McKinsey, coming to people, what people like people after McKinsey? What are you doing like that?
So okay, thank you for that. Personal story, I think I again had to reflect quite a bit, and what I realized, what I learned to articulate about a year ago is that I think there were 3 main influences in my childhood that led me to become this person. So both my parents have been working in the government. So my dad's from IIT Madras, funny enough, and my mother worked in the State Bank of Travancore, State Bank of India. My father worked in DRDO, and so I grew up not really like, the first time I heard about the profit motive was when I was in my MBA. That companies are there to make profit. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So that was one. And so I grew up with generally their ethos of just being helpful, etc., whatever their ethos were. Second is, I used to read a lot of books and all fiction. And at some point you start feeling like, oh, there is evil in the world and you should all fight that evil. And the third thing, I think, just the society and the space that I was in was had a lot of diversity, equity, fairness, and somehow those values started to take root. And you know how it is when you start doing something good, people start encouraging, and then like the kid becomes like, oh, this gives me encouragement, this gives me positive reinforcement, so you start doing more of it. I think I will was the first time that my actions found feet, where I was actually able to do something in a sustained way for multiple years. And thankfully, because I think it was a slow transition for people. I found my way to a lot of social impact or social sector related work at McKinsey. One of the projects was to work with people as a pro bono growth strategy study. And I fell in love with the organization when I was working there. And I thought it was phenomenal. And it took me a year to join. And the world was kind enough that they also structured it as a secondment where I resigned, but I had a return offer for a year. So that it was my first job transition, and that really helped me when I was making my first job switch. It took time to make all these things happen. It required a lot of orchestration to make things happen and a lot of kindness from a lot of people. But I think that helped to make that switch, and generally, family was supportive. Thank you everyone for coming, and I will hand the mic back to